County District Attorney. You know, I want to thank Jerry for inviting me. When I came here in 2016, it was March of 2016, Jerry's one of the first people I met when I came to Curry County. He was working part-time in the DA's office there, and I think Everett tasked him with showing me the ropes in the courtroom and, you know, getting my feet wet in there. So thank you, Jerry, and I'm happy to get to enjoy retirement a little bit now. So what I want to do today is kind of give you a 30,000-foot view of my office and what we do. If anyone has any specific questions, please raise your hand as we go along. That's mainly what I want to do. Is if you guys do have any questions, please ask them and I can hopefully answer them for you. Like Jerry said, I've been the DA since I was appointed in late February of 2020, and about 2 weeks later the world came to an end and COVID happened and the world shut down. And I was elected in May of 2020, which was the primary election. I was unopposed. And that term, the elected term, started in January of 2021. Before that, I was deputy DA here starting in March of 2016. So I've been here about 7 years now. So I'm going off the assumption everyone kind of has the basic understanding of who I am and what I do. I'm a prosecutor. I represent the state in any criminal action brought in Curry County. I do have one deputy DA currently. Our office is budgeted for 3 deputy DAs. We recently lost one and are having a very hard time filling that position. And one of those is a budget, or is a grant funded position, which will be going away at the end of next year. But, so currently I have one deputy district attorney, myself, so 2 attorneys in the office. I have an office manager. I have a victim advocate director and a part-time victim advocate. And it took us about 8 months to a year to hire a victim advocate director. So as you all probably know, it's hard to find people to work, and it's hard to find people to come to Curry County, especially attorneys, new attorneys. There's a lot of different obstacles, the location, the housing situation. If you do find someone just out of law school who does want to come down here, it's very hard to find a place to live. The last deputy DA one I had, he's from Gold Beach, went to undergrad at University of Oregon, then went to University of Utah for law school, and he wanted to come back here and work in Curry County, and he did. He came here and worked in my office for a couple of years, but he was living with his parents the entire time. Never find a place to live. Ultimately, he left and now works in a civil firm up in Portland. So housing is a problem. Pay is a problem. You know, even if you could find a house to buy or a place to rent, probably couldn't afford it with what we can pay a new attorney starting out. So there are a lot of issues there, but I'm happy that I have one deputy DA, and we do the best we can at this point. I am, you know, I don't know, I'm probably boring you guys with budget talk, but I, as the elected district attorney, my salary is paid by the state of Oregon. It's not paid by the county budget. The deputy DA and the rest of my office staff is paid by the county budget. But it's funny, just historically, you know, the state used to pay for deputy district attorneys as well. The name of the budget that pays my salary is district attorneys and their deputies, but it doesn't pay for any deputies. So historically they did, but the state went away from that and has put it all on the county to pay for the district attorney's office and staff. So like I said, we prosecute all crimes that happen in Curry County. And it's not just crimes that are referred to us by the county sheriff's office. There's 5 police agencies that refer crimes to us: Port Orford PD, the sheriff's office, Gold Beach PD, Brookings PD, and the Oregon State Police. So how that works is they will, the police investigate all the crimes. The DA's office, we don't investigate crimes. We rely on the police to do the investigation, and they will refer charges to us. And we will look at those police reports and all the evidence, and we'll make a filing decision, a charging decision of whether to file a charge against the person. And when we look at a police report and we look at the evidence, we look at it through the lens of, do we believe we can prove this beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury of 6 or 12 people? Police will arrest someone based on probable cause, which is essentially 51%, more likely than not. But when we look at it, can we prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a much higher bar than more likely than not, to a jury of 6 or 12 people. And we have to convince all of those people, 6 people being a misdemeanor jury, 12 people being a felony jury. So we have to convince all of them beyond a reasonable doubt that this crime occurred, and there's a number of different elements for every crime, and we have to prove all those elements beyond a reasonable doubt. So, we take this very seriously, obviously, and if we don't believe that we can prove a case, we won't file it. We take a number of cases to grand jury, where grand jurers decide whether to indict a person as well. There's a lot of different reasons for doing that, and I'm not going to bore you with that unless you guys really want to know. But I guess the main point is it is high burden of proof, and we take that seriously. Just the criminal justice system as a whole, once we make a filing decision, a person goes to court, they're arraigned by a judge on that charge. For a crime, they're given the opportunity, they're asked, do you want an attorney to help you? And if they're indigent, meaning, very poor, they have the right to have an attorney appointed to them. And the vast majority of criminal defendants in this county, in the state, in this country are indigent. And so they are appointed an attorney, which they don't have to pay for, and they have to apply, and there's, I don't know what the numbers are, what the threshold is, but the vast majority do apply and are granted a public defender, essentially, right? Here in Curry County, we have 3 private attorneys who have a contract with the state to provide public defense services. And many of you may know Jim Gardner. He's been doing it for, seems like forever. I think his bar number starts with 72, meaning 1972 is when he became an attorney. So 50 years he's been a practicing lawyer. There's another Rick Inakuchi who's been doing it for a long time, and Mike Love, who is fairly recent to the area, but he's also been doing it a long time. But they have a private contract with the state, so the state pays them to provide these public defense services in the county. And so those are the 3 attorneys we work with the most. A person who has a job, who has assets, and is accused of a crime and is brought forward on a DA's information or an indictment, they will have to hire their own attorney if they want to have an attorney represent them. You do have the right to waive your right to an attorney and represent yourself. That's never a very good idea for the most part, but yeah. So if normally the crimes that someone will, that we see private attorneys on are things like DUIs and things like that. But most of the time it is appointed attorneys. So, I don't know, I think I'm probably boring you guys. So I just kind of want to skip ahead. Jerry wanted me to come up with some interesting cases that I could think of with some, you know, interesting facts at least. So I've come up with a couple that happened recently that, you know, come to my mind. One is an individual down in Harbor. He broke into the South Coast Shopping Center. If you guys know where that is, there's a number of businesses there, and it was at night. He broke into one of the businesses. His ultimate goal was to get into a marijuana store that was in that place. But where he went into the building was another business. So we went around that building, and he ended up breaking through a wall in the bathroom of that business to get into another area of the shopping center, which then he broke another wall and got into the marijuana store. And he spent a lot of time in the marijuana store. He grabbed a bag and was filling it with a lot of things. In the marijuana store, it has surveillance footage on the inside. Nowhere else did, but it did. And it had an alarm system, but it only had an alarm system on the outside doors and one internal door where the office was, where the safe was, where all the money, all the high value items were. And that's the door that he was trying to get into. He spent a lot of time, and you know, I get to see this on the surveillance video later on. He takes a lot of time to take the molding off of the door to try and get into that office. And finally he does. It takes a long time, but he finally does. And as soon as he smashes through that door, the alarm goes off. And there's no audio on the surveillance video, but you can tell when the alarm goes off, because he does something like this, and you can tell, and then it's panic mode. And he's running back and forth, trying to find an exit. And he goes, there's another surveillance at the front of the business of the marijuana store. And so he's on the inside and he's running. He ran full steam at the window to try and get out. And he smashed his full body weight against that. It didn't break. It spiderwebbed, but it didn't break. He was fine. He hit it with a garbage can a number of times. He was finally able to get a little hole in it, but he couldn't get out. And so then he goes back into the business, and you see him climb up into the ceiling. And it's not a ceiling like this. It's a ceiling that has kind of the drop plates there. I forget what that's called. But he's climbing, and on one video you see him fall through the ceiling and back down onto the ground. And so it's pretty comical watching this surveillance video. And finally, the police aren't there yet, and this is probably 5-10 minutes of this going on. He does a ton of damage to this business. He finally goes back to that small hole in the front window, and he dives headfirst through it. And there's a video on the outside where you see him do that, and yeah, he cuts himself. There's blood on the ground, but he does manage to get himself out. The funny part about it, the ironic part about it, is there's a door right next to this window that he could have just pushed. He could have just gone out. I mean, it was locked from the outside, but it's one of those doors that just has a push thing that you can walk right out. He could have walked out, but eventually he was found. The police knew who this person was just by seeing him on the surveillance video. Eventually he was found. He recently pled guilty to a couple charges, and I believe he got 3 or 4 years in prison.
Which did you want to do?
That's what?
Wait,
No.
you said you were going
Not
highly intelligent, or what?
I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about that, Jerry. I don't know. You know, there are some who are smarter than others, that's for sure.
have kind of an operational question. You know, I've watched too much Perry Mason, I guess. But is there, do you get involved when it's a jury trial? Because there's some cases where a judge makes all the determination himself, maybe like a speeding ticket or something else.
Right.
You don't get involved in those. What's the level that you get involved?
So the speeding ticket, that's a good question. The speeding ticket level, those are all violations.
Okay.
So when it comes to a crime, that's when I get involved. And a crime would be misdemeanor or a felony.
Uh-huh. So if somebody breaks an ordinance, that isn't considered a crime, or is it considered a crime?
Here, it's all violations.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe in some counties, cities, it could be crimes where they have municipal courts, things like that, but we don't have any of those that handle criminal cases at least. I think Brookings has a muni court that just does all violations. And by statute, the DA's office is not allowed, we're not allowed to represent the state in a violation case unless the person hires an attorney. So say someone hires an attorney on a speeding ticket case, then we would represent the state.
Okay.
That doesn't happen very often at all. Just practically speaking, you're going to spend 5 times as much on an attorney as you would on the speeding ticket itself. Right? And normally the only time that'll happen where they'll hire an attorney is where there's some other collateral consequences that they don't want to happen.
Lose their license or DUI or something.
Exactly.
What about like corporate or personal environmental violation of what would be an ordinance of some kind that could result in a massive fine, in which case they would lawyer out? Did that go before?
Well, a massive fine, it only comes with criminal cases.
Okay.
Yeah, a violation level,
But
there's...
if they were going to protest that fine in any way, would they have recourse for that? Like if the fine was assessed for a violation and then the individual involved?
Or so for the fine to be assessed, they would have to be found
Would
guilty
that be found?
of the violation. So I guess, yes, they could appeal it, but normally that doesn't happen in a violation case. But the maximum fine on violations is not very high in the grand scheme of things. In crimes, it can be very high. I don't know the schedule offhand. I know the maximum fine for a Class A misdemeanor, which is the highest level of a misdemeanor, there's Class A, Class B, Class C, is $6,250. I think it's $15,000 for a Class C felony, and it goes up, I think maybe a Class A felony is $125,000 or something like that. Those fines are never really assessed. Normally the penalty that someone is getting on a criminal case is jail time or prison time on those more serious cases.
What's the most common crime that you see, and is the level of crime increasing, about the same?
Most common crime we see, in this historically would be DUI. We see a lot of DUIs. Criminal trespasses, disorderly conduct, those are lower level misdemeanors. Disorderly conduct is a B misdemeanor. Criminal trespass in the second degree is a Class C misdemeanor, which is the lowest level crime there is. And I can talk about what the maximum jail is on all those, but it's 30 days on a Class C misdemeanor. And this is maximum. You never really see this happen. Class B is 180 days in jail. Class A misdemeanor is 364 days in jail, a day short of a year, essentially. But so some of what we see the most of, I would say, is the DUIs and criminal trespass to disorderly conduct, kind of your transient crimes. And we see a lot of that, and repeated over and over and over again, the same people. I have seen an uptick in property crimes, I would say, recently. Not so much violent crime, that kind of stays steady. There's a lot of domestic violence. We have a lot of domestic violence cases as well. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I just want to get a feel for the type of activity out there, and is it increasing, like related to the economy, and the economy gets bad, and there's more property crime, or
So us in the law enforcement community attribute the property crime increase to Measure 110 and basically decriminalizing methamphetamine and cocaine and heroin, things like that.
Chief Jordan was in here, and he talked about a problem with the homeless used to have a fear of going to jail. Now there's just this, they don't care if they get arrested or not, they figure they're not going to go to jail because of the change in the laws. And talk a little bit about your feeling about enforcing the problems associated with that.
So what he's talking about is the Senate Bill 48, where they will no longer be held in jail. And that's not always the case. There's a number of overriding circumstances where if somebody fails to appear a number of times on their citation or anything, then they will end up being held and they will be charged, or they will finally be arraigned and they will be held normally until the case resolves, because they're a flight risk, because of the fact that they failed to appear for court so many times. And it does take quite a few times. And, you know, in a lot of counties, they will reduce these things to violations as a matter of course for criminal trespass to very low-level misdemeanors. We don't do that here, especially if it's a person who is doing this repeatedly and it's becoming a problem for homeowner, property owner, business owner. So yeah, we do our best with what we're given to enforce those laws. And you know, there are a number of particular people who have, you know, there's one guy right now who's in jail. He has somewhere between 10 and 15 charges of criminal trespass, all on different dates. You know, and he's finally in custody, and hopefully we can get the case resolved. But yeah, we try and enforce those. I think we do a pretty good job.
I know there was a guy in Gatineau who, when a guy told up, they go break a window to get themselves arrested and put in jail because it was a worm jail. You know, and those become, I would think, highly repeat offenders. And how do you solve something like that?
You don't. In that situation, you use jail as a deterrent to crime, right? In that situation, this is what the person wants. They want to go to jail. So there's nothing you can do. I've seen, I don't know if we're talking about the same person, but I've seen where the judge will let them out because the judge knows that that's what this person wants. And, you know, that's problematic as well because it will just go commit more crimes. So.
But some of the crime stuff, because of mental health, are we doing anything? Do we have a branch, an arm, an organization that will help these people?
So in Curry County, we have ADAPT, who does the behavioral health stuff. And, you know, it used to be Curry Community Health, now it's ADAPT. They're fairly new to, they're not new to the behavioral health game, but they're new to the area here. So they're having their own struggles in hiring people. I think someone was telling me, I forget who, that they have, you know, 40 or 50 openings that they're trying to hire people and they can't hire anyone.
Is that the one by the community center?
Yes.
I believe so, yeah. And there's an office in Port Orford. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure they have one in Brookings as well.
Thank you.
You see a lot on the news that there's a shortage of public defenders. I take it the 3 you have for Curry County are adequate?
Yeah. We don't, yes, so there's a lot of headlines about the public defense crisis in Oregon. And no, I don't think that has hit Curry County yet. You know, I would argue that there is also a prosecutor crisis in this state as well. I was at a conference last week where most of the elected DAs were there, and everyone except the folks in the Portland metro area are having a terrible time hiring prosecutors. They're all down quite a few deputy DAs, and these are offices that are budgeted for quite a few, anywhere from, I think Multnomah County has 100 deputies or something crazy like that, but, there's one person saying, they're budgeted for 10 deputies, they have 2. So, there's a public defense crisis and there's a prosecution crisis when it comes to hiring.
What does it cost to go, forget Harvard or Yale law, what's it cost to go to Utah and get your law degree? I mean, thousands upon thousands.
He was very smart, he had scholarships, so I don't know how much they would pay, but law school is incredibly expensive.
Right.
I went to the University of Oregon, an in-state school, and it was close to $30,000 a year, and that was 10 years ago, so I don't know what it is now, and that's in-state. I'm sure that folks coming from out of state were probably paying $50,000.
Yeah, so, and I doubt that public defenders make a lot of money anyway,
Right, yeah.
so it's hard, yeah.
And neither do prosecutors. I mean, you don't go into this line of work to make money, to become rich, at least. I mean, we make a comfortable wage, obviously, but, if folks who go to law school are, I'm going to become a big lawyer and I'm going to make a lot of money, they're not coming into criminal law.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about fraud and scams? We have such an elderly population here. Is that something, I mean, it kind of seems like, in the old days, somebody might steal a check, but nobody even has a check anymore. So where has fraud gone in this time? I bet you could probably answer a lot of that, but from a criminal standpoint.
Yeah, we see a lot of identity theft and things like that. For the elderly population, there is the Adult Protective Services Division of DHS who deals with a lot of those situations, and they'll do an investigation and give us that case file. We haven't seen a lot of that recently, but we have had cases that we've taken to grand jury to get subpoenas for, to try and get records where, it's your classic Nigerian prince or whatever situation, or, someone bought a car from someone in Florida, sight unseen, sent them a cashier's check or wired them money, and lo and behold, the car never showed up when it was supposed to be being transported. And those are really sad.
Yeah.
Sad cases because,
Complicated. Over
yeah.
state lines too, I would think.
Over state lines, and a lot of times it's going to a different country. And so there's really, one, we don't know who the suspect is because they give a false name and it's an account that's closed now and we can't figure out who it really was. And so, we don't have a suspect. A lot of times, that money's going somewhere that's not in a U.S. jurisdiction. So, but having said that, that doesn't happen all that often. But I do remember a couple of those cases.
A question, then a comment first. There are lawyers that fall for that trick. Collect this judgment for me and send me the cash,
Yeah.
and then the judgment is false. But do you keep track of the percentage of cases that you look at that are sent to you by a police department that you choose not to prosecute? A founding versus unfounding rate, for example? Use that term.
We do. We have a case management system where we have all that data. I don't know those statistics off the top of my head, but I would say that the majority of cases that are referred to us with recommended charges, we will file. And there's a million different factors that go into it. And if it's a borderline case or if it's there are a number of cases where we'll call the victim and say, okay, what do you want to happen here? Because, and we'll explain what the problems are with the case, the evidentiary issues, and we'll, you know, we always want to know what the victim wants out of the case. But that wasn't the question. The question was the data. I don't have that off the top of my head at this point.
So you don't,
But I can say the majority of cases that are sent to us are filed on. I just don't know what.
so there's no way of knowing which of the 5 departments that send you cases are sending you good cases versus bad cases.
Well, I could probably figure that out, but no, I mean.
I wouldn't ask you to divulge what you think.
No, and I wouldn't say that any of the agencies are sending me bad cases on a regular basis. I wouldn't say.
Okay, we're getting close to the end.
Well, will you participate in our small
Yeah.
raffle ticket drawing?
So if you pick one of those, you'll know who's the winner.
Okay. So, if you lose, I guess it's my fault.
Yep.
If that goes what?
Just read the last 3 numbers.
358.
All right,
Jerry.
Now, if he picks the Joker, he gets $250.
Wow.
And everyone trusts me that there's a Joker.
Oh, not a.
Okay. John, let's give a hand to John.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.